Okay, well, it appears that planning board meetings are the place to be every other Monday. Thank you all for coming. I'm Carol Lisbon, Chair of the Dover Planning Board. I'm calling this meeting to order at 7:01. This meeting is being conducted via Zoom per authorization from the governor. So I would ask that you keep yourselves muted to avoid any background noise unless you're going to be speaking. Appreciate that. Let me take a roll call first. Jody Shu,
Here.
George Sidgwick.
Here.
We are also joined by Sue Hall and Jasmine Farinacci from the Planning Board office. So that is our three members this evening. We are starting to a new process, a new agenda item number 1 on Planning Board, not dissimilar to what the Board of Selectmen and the Dover Board of Health have been doing, which is to allow citizen comments for the first 5 minutes of a meeting. As long as they are comments that do not apply to a particular agenda item, then the individual can certainly talk while we do our agenda item, as is our process. So I'm going to start the meeting tonight and asking if there are any attendees this evening who are here with something I'd like to say to the planning board that is not involved with any of the agenda items. And if so, please raise your hand or come off mute. Justine, I see you. Okay, you've got 3 minutes, madame.
No surprise, 3 out of 5 minutes is 60%. I'm not sure I'm entitled to all that, but as Carol knows, and the rest of the planning board, first, I give you guys a lot of credit as volunteers for dealing with what are very contentious issues, number 1. Number 2, I've lived in this town since I was 28 years old. I'm a lot older now. All I can say is the site review plan process is not working, as I think you guys know, because on February 24th, you're going to have town council educate you and the public who intend to show up then to comment about not only the rights of the individual person who owns the property, but about the potential or actual negative effects of their behavior on their neighborhood. Noise, pollution of wells or potential pollution of wells. And in the case of the 20 Haven Street garage, and John Benson, if you want to speak, go ahead. You've got a private well approximately 15 feet from a boundary line that's not shown up on any plans that have shown up before the planning board. This is not acceptable, and I'm outraged at the lack of community involvement by the abutters, and the fact that, thirdly, it seems to me after all these years I've been going to Concom meetings and planning board meetings, you have to show up with an attorney, just like the developers do, in order to be given a fair hearing.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Is that it?
Yep.
Okay, is there anybody else? Okay, in that case, we're going to move to agenda item 2A, which is reconsideration of the site plan review at 2 Dedham Street for the fuel depot. This has been going on for about 4 months now, so I thought in order to get everybody on the same page, I would just give a quick summary of how we got to where we got to. We don't need to show that, Jasmine, thank you. So on August 16th of 2024, the planning board received an application from Weston and Sampson on behalf of Dover's DPW for a relocation of the fuel storage tanks from the front of the building to the back corner of the Highway Department DPW lot. On September 9th, we opened up a preliminary site plan review with Weston and Sampson presenting. It was noted at that point, and I'll note again, that the Board of Selectmen will have final approval of these plans as the town garage is in the O district. And according to bylaw chapter 36B4, The planning board's role is to make a recommendation regarding approval to the BOS for construction that's being done in the O District. The planning board raised many questions during the discussion, some of which Weston and Sampson needed to research, and others that the DPW was best equipped to answer. So the site plan review was continued for additional information from Weston and Sampson and the DPW. A summary list was provided in the official minutes of September 9th, which were placed on the website after the minutes were approved at our meeting on October 21st. And of course, our discussion can be heard through the YouTube recording link, which is on the Dover website. The main concerns raised focused on the proximity of the system to the 100-foot wetland buffer and the cell tower. Weston and Sampson responded to some of the planning board's questions in memos dated September 13th and October 22nd. These documents are on the website. Because the proposed location was just outside the buffer delineation, we asked the Conservation Commission to review, and their approval was required. At the planning board's request, Weston and Sampson met with Concom on October 23rd, 2024, and as a result, certain conditions were requested by Concom as conveyed in an email to the planning board dated October 31st, also on the website. Concom suggestions were added to the conditions of the site plan review recommendation that we voted on at our January 6, 2025 meeting. So on January 6th, we held our second meeting on the application. Our bylaws, Chapter 186, 36.D.3.E, state that once a complete application is received, the planning board has 30 days to address it or is it deemed unconditionally approved. The planning board's practice, though not legally required, is to inform abutters within 300 feet when a preliminary site plan review application is received, to provide transparency of our work and allow neighbors to be aware of what's going on in their neighborhood and provide input to the planning board. When an abutter on January 6th informed us that notification may not have been sent out by the planning board, I asked the applicant and the DPW if they would agree to an extension so we could hold another meeting. The DPW and Weston and Sampson did not agree, as they felt it would make it difficult to go out to bid and get the necessary quotes in time for review by the Capital Budget Committee and the Warrant Committee, and then presentation at town meeting to vote on the approximately $1.5 million project. The following day, a clarification of Weston and Sampson's response to their timeline was received by the planning board, which stated that the concern was if a design for a new location was going to be requested, but unfortunately, we had already voted. Because of the many conditions added to the draft decision as a result of our discussion and the work of Concom, we voted on January 6th a recommendation with conditions rather than now the application to be unconditionally approved and recommended without a vote and without conditions. We also stated that we would check on the abutter notification issue the following day, and we did. On January 7th, it was confirmed that notification had not occurred from the planning board office. As chair, I did not sign the recommendation that had been voted the previous evening, and we then checked with town council on how best to proceed. It was suggested by council that we reopen the deliberation. An abutter notification to 33 abutters was sent out on January 16th with the Zoom link for this meeting and a link to all the application material, which by then had been added to the planning board's application under review website page. Tonight's site plan review is a reconsideration of the site plan review recommendation voted on January 6th. We will build upon the discussions and documents from our previous two meetings and address any new material presented by the applicant and abutters. This includes a memo from Weston and Sampson dated January 22nd and an email from abutter Nicole Safarian dated January 14th. We will take a vote on the draft recommendation after adding any new findings or recommendations as a result of tonight's discussion. After the planning board has voted on a recommendation, it will go to the Board of Selectmen for review and approval. They will have the opportunity to continue research on our findings and our recommendations before voting on their decision at a meeting also open to the public. So with that, I would appreciate if Weston and Sampson could just provide us with a summary of the points that they made in their January 22nd article.
Thank you,
Is
Carol,
Jesse here?
and thank you to the board. My name is Jesse O'Donnell. I am an engineer with Weston and Sampson, representing the Department of Public Works tonight as their engineering consultant. And as Carol mentioned, this is a request to modify a site plan approval that was issued last May pursuant to the new salt shed that has been constructed on the site and some miscellaneous stormwater improvements. So we are proposing to modify that approval to include a new relocated fuel station on the site. And just a question for the board. Would you like me to go over some general images and kind of familiarize everyone with the project before I dive into the specific matter about the siting analysis, or should I just start with the siting analysis itself?
You know, that's a great question, Jesse. I think it might be helpful if we were to put up this site plan. So as you're talking about the pros and cons of the locations,
Sure.
we have a visual as well.
Sure. So let me share my screen here, and I'll just give it a quick second to make sure everyone can see it. All right. Can everyone see the screen on?
Yeah.
Yep, great. Okay. So I'll just take probably 2 or 3 minutes to familiarize everyone with the site and the site plan so that we can talk about the siting options that were assessed. And then I'll hand over the presentation to my colleague Tyler here at Weston and Sampson just to talk about a few additional safety items that we'd like to review with the board and the public before we open it up to public comment and any comments from the board. But please do feel free to interrupt and ask with any questions as I go through here. So on the screen here, we have an image of the site. In green is the town hall. So the DPW town garage site is just across the street. It's a long, kind of skinny paved area. In yellow on the screen, you'll see location where the existing fuel tanks are located. We are proposing to decommission and remove these fuel tanks because the warranty expired last year. And our proposal is to relocate a new fuel system to the rear of the site, indicated generally by the red rectangle. In orange is the existing Department of Public Works garage building, and in blue is the new salt shed that was just installed. For everyone's general orientation, in light blue is kind of the axis upon which our plans are shown. So I'll flip to the next screen here, just so for everyone's reference, we're going to kind of twist to accommodate that axis. So let's zoom into the rear portion of the site where the red rectangle is and see what the plan looks like. So here's the plan. We have the proposed location of the new fuel system indicated by the red and orange and blue area on the plan. So in orange is the just under 10,000 gallon double-walled steel split tank. In red is the fueling canopy with associated stormwater piping to connect it to the proposed stormwater system on the site. In blue is the diesel exhaust fluid tote with a heated enclosure and a dispenser reel. And we are proposing the existing fuel system in front of the site to be removed after the installation of the proposed system so that there is a continuity in service. So on this screen here is a quick image of the existing fuel tanks. There are 2 above ground storage tanks on the site with bollards and a dispenser. And the proposed system also does propose above ground storage tanks as well, with a canopy, which the current system does not have. So with that, I'd like to jump into the siting assessment that we underwent with the DPW a year to 2 years ago when we started investigating the potential options for this project. The first siting option that we assessed was just replacing the current fuel system right in place. And for a number of reasons, we deemed that to be unideal or inadequate. The first of which, the current location of the existing fuel tanks does require reverse vehicular maneuvers to access the tanks, whether you're reversing in or reversing out, which just presents at the best an inconvenience, but at the worst a safety risk and some major fuel delivery challenges. So this is mentioned in memos that we received from the fire and police chiefs were included with our application. The fire and police chiefs are present tonight and can help to answer any questions that the board or public may have. Second, this location would provide an interruption to on-site fueling operations, which would add cost associated with whatever temporary fueling solution that would be found. And lastly, the tanks A portion of the tanks are currently located within an AT&T easement, which prohibits structures, so that's an existing non-conforming condition. And a portion of the tanks also are located within the property line structure setback, which presents an existing non-conforming condition. So by relocating the tanks outside of this area, we would restore, we would restore conformity with both of those conditions. So with all that in mind, we set out to look for a new location for the tanks. And at first, we looked right in front of the building, which is kind of counterintuitive. Usually fuel systems like this are placed around the outside or the rear of a lot. But we wanted to look at this potential location, and we found right away that it would either block vehicular access fully to one side of the building, or would require the removal of the septic system or removal of several parking spaces. So we quickly deemed this location to be infeasible. At this point in our analysis, it started to seem like all roads were pointing to placing the fuel system in the rear of the lot for a number of pros. But we still looked at another location, which is number 3 here, which is placing the fuel system just south of where the existing fuel tanks are located. This is an area that's currently covered by soil. It's about a 50-foot by 75-foot kind of soil area that the DPW currently uses for material and equipment storage. So first, we noted that relocating the fuel system here would reduce operational efficiency because it would require the DPW to relocate that operation. Also, this area is not paved. It's covered by soil currently. And we were very reluctant to add impervious to an area that's currently not impervious because it would exacerbate flooding issues, which already exist on the site. And the DPW certainly aims to limit new impervious in accordance with the stormwater best management practices that are common to our industry. So continuing with this location, another con was the 4% slope that exists in this location. Presents some pad installation and fuel operation challenges. Ideally, a pad would be installed on a slope that's closer to 2% or less. And lastly, this location would require additional geotechnical and environmental exploration, which would not be required in the rear portion of the site because those explorations have already happened. So by locating it here, that would also require an extension in the timeline and additional explorations and costs. So for all these reasons and the additional benefits I'm about to mention, we selected the rear of the site as the best location for the project. The fuel tanks conform to zoning and dimensional requirements where they're currently proposed. We already incorporated Conservation Commission's feedback to their satisfaction. Additionally, this is the best option for vehicular access and circulation, and we can have the police and fire chief speak more to that if needed. The rear location keeps critical infrastructure away from a public-facing location. The grades in this area are more forgiving. They're not quite the 4% that we saw out front. They are less steep. And lastly, the National Fire Protection Association requires tanks like this one to be offset 15 feet from other buildings and structures. So the closest we have is about a 20+ foot offset to, I think it is the Parks and Rec garage. So we're in exceedance of that requirement as well. So with that in mind, I'd like to pass this along to my colleague Tyler, who can talk a little bit about some of the safety measures associated with the tanks themselves.
Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Sure can, Tyler.
Yep. So I know Jesse went through some of the location discussion, but I know there's a lot of concern about the safety around the fuel island. And I just wanted to highlight that safety is important to Weston and Sampson and the DPW. We wouldn't be proposing anything that we felt would endanger folks, either the abutters or the DPW personnel using the fuel island. I just wanted to highlight some of the safety features that went into the design of the fuel island. And first, starting off with the tank that we chose. So the tank isn't your average tank. This is a very over-engineered or highly engineered tank. It meets some of the strictest safety requirements in the country, meeting the UL 2085 rating. And I just wanted to highlight what that actually means for the tank. One of the first tests is that these tanks have to go through what they call a fire test. You can see in the image is a tank inside of a 2000-degree furnace to simulate a pool fire. And it has to be in there for 2 hours without having the inside temperature raised more than 400 degrees. So essentially, this protects you from someone pouring gasoline all over it and lighting it on fire. And the tank still has to maintain preventing the contents from inside from getting too hot. Next, Jesse. So right after that test, they go through a stream test, which they blast the tank with cold water to show that the tank won't rupture when they're trying to cool it off after a fire, preventing a release. The next test that they have to go through is an impact test. You can see there's a 12,000-pound object being swung into the side of the tank. This is to simulate like a vehicular incident to show that there would be no rupture to the inner tank. These tanks are considered protected above ground tanks according to NFPA and meet the vehicular protection requirements all on their own without having bollards. But we added 6-inch bollards around the tank to provide an additional protection. And then in addition to all that, the tanks have to be ballistic tested. They're shot 5 times from a .308 caliber rifle from it's 100 feet away or 33 yards away, give or take. You'll see there's 5 bullets on the outer tank, and then it has to not be able to pierce the inner tank. And that photo shows an example of what the inner tank would look like. So the tank itself is very, very engineered in a safe tank. The next part of the design that I wanted to talk about is the vapors and emissions design built into the system. One of the first ones is called Stage 1 Vapor Recovery, and this is used to meet the National Clean Air Act requirements. Whenever a fuel delivery is brought to the system, a fuel truck will pump fluids into the tank, displacing vapors, and we have to add a pipe that will displace the vapors right back into the truck to prevent them from, emitting out into the environment and moving off the property. There's also a vent PV, it's called a pressure vacuum vent. So this is meant to shut the vent off at all times, except for when the tank has to depressurize for, like, say that it's really hot out and the tank gets heated up, the pressure has to be released. So that it'll just let it depressurize a little bit and then it will close again. The next feature that deals with vapors is a onboard refueling vapor recovery system, which has been designed in vehicles since 1998. And this is it does a similar thing as the Stage 1 vapor. When you're filling up your tank in your car, it forces the vapors to a canister that captures the vapors and prevents it from being released into the environment. And then the next slide, Jesse, these things aren't winning awards for being aesthetical masterpieces, but everything on them is meant for a reason, whether it's safety or function. And just not to bore everyone, but these tanks are very, very strong. You can shoot them with a gun, you can light them on fire, you can hit them with a car and they won't leak. The only other way that we can think of that it could potentially leak is just over time, sometimes water builds up in these tanks and they can corrode the inner tank, in which case they would leak. They would leak into the interstitial space, which is continuously monitored by an electronic leak monitoring system. That will set off an alarm. It will also automatically notify personnel with emails of such an event. We also have overfill prevention valves, which is a float in the fill that will, when the tank reaches 95% full, it will shut off the valve, preventing more fluid from going into the tank. There's also an audible visual alarm that goes off at 90% to notify the fuel tank delivery truck, as well as the DPW personnel present that the tanks to shut off the fill. We also have inline detection, which means if the pump detects a scenario of pressure loss that's inconsistent with a delivery scenario, it will automatically shut it off. Every segment of the fuel piping line that can be either shut off with valves has built-in pressure relief, so that if it's baking in the sun all day, the pipes can be depressurized by letting fluid back from the pipes back into the tank, preventing a rupture. The dispensers, as well as the hoses, have shear valves on them. So if someone accidentally drove away with the hose in their car, it would shear at that point, sealing off both ends of the hose. We also have a anti-siphon valve on top of the tank, so that if there is a leak in the pipeline, it won't accidentally siphon the whole tank onto the ground. We have a fuel management system, which only allows authorized personnel and trained personnel to use the tank. We're specifying a catch basin mat to be placed over the nearest catch basin during fuel tank deliveries, just to be extra cautious. They'll be equipped with fire extinguishers. And then also there's been discussion about adding fixed fire suppression in the canopies. So I just hope that sheds some light on the safety built into the system for folks who may not be fully aware.
Thanks, Tyler. That concludes our presentations. We'd like to open up discussion and send it back to the board.
Great. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Tyler. That was very informative and I really appreciate the detail.
Thank you.
So I'm going to open this up first to planning board members for any questions and comments they may have to Jesse or Tyler. And then I will open it up to the resident attendees. So Jody or George, do you have any questions for Tyler or Taylor?
I have no questions, but I really want to say thank you for that presentation because that was extremely helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was helpful given the conversations that have happened here over the course of this process. Just as a sort of a bit of an addendum, I'm sure you may not have this in front of you, but just curious as to if you have any information or data on any incidences relating to these tanks in the last X number of years. Do you have anything like that you could share?
I don't have any statistics off the top of my head. I have been working with Weston & Simpson for 10 years installing similar fuel islands, and I have personally not heard of any issues from the fuel islands that I've worked on, and I've done a lot of them. So
Okay, thank you.
Okay, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we'll now open it up for any new information or content. Nicole, are you here this evening? Is Nicole Safarian here?
I think so. It just says Nicole, but I think that's her.
Nicole, you had sent us an email.
Yes.
And
Hi.
Okay, great.
I am here. Sorry, I'm on my phone tonight.
Oh, okay. I wanted to give you the opportunity to quickly review the email that you sent to us because that was after our last meeting.
Yes, I don't have access to it right now. Did you want me to read it?
Well, I wanted you to comment on it, but I can read it since you don't have it in front of you. and
Okay,
then
that'd be helpful.
Would that be helpful?
Yes.
Sure. So this was sent from Nicole to the entire planning board on January 14th. Dear Board of Selectmen, I am writing to express my concerns about the plan to relocate the fuel station within the town yard. Moving the gas station closer to residential areas poses significant risks to public health and safety due to potential exposure to benzene and other harmful emissions. The relocation is unnecessary and would cost the town $1.5 million. It would be better to leave the station in its current location. It does not need to be moved again. The fires in Los Angeles have demonstrated how quickly catastrophic events can occur. Relocating the gas station to a congested area in the back of the town yard with heavy industrial traffic near wooded areas and conservation land, drinking water, and under a cell phone tower equipped with batteries, generators, and power packs poses significant risk to the community. The new location is also closer to homes, about 150 feet, and the necessary fire safety measures such as fire extinguishers excuse me, have not been adequately addressed. I am currently researching state and EPA regulations about fuel stations located within 500 feet of residential homes. I'll follow up when I learn more. This move prioritizes convenience over health and safety. I respectfully urge the board to consider alternative locations.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me time to speak again. I would just like to start this conversation off by saying you are moving the tank significantly closer to 6 abutters. And I'd also like to ask people, would you want a gas tank in your backyard when you're paying Dover property taxes? I live directly behind the town yard. There are massive plow trucks that swing around exactly where you would put that gas tank. I have videos of it that I took in the last snowstorm. I will share them with the board. They back up and pull in and swing exactly where that gas tank would be. These are massive trucks full of sand, and it is very dark back there. So I don't know how that will be compensated. I know you said you'd put beams there, but it's also very close to the Department of Public Works and that cell phone tower. There was a fancy presentation with some more information that was not in the other presentation. So it sounds like some changes have been, or some more information's been added. There is now saying, you're on our saying there are fire extinguishers. I'm wondering what the added cost is to that, to the town. And the storm drains that are being, if somebody could give some more explanation of the new storm drains that are being relocated there and how many feet away from there. I know you said you put a cap over it, but listen, people forget to put the cap over it. It gets in the water. It's contaminating our wells, which was a concern in the past, which is my understanding why it was not moved there. What was moved from the back to the front is because of water contamination concerns. So my biggest concern is how are you going to mitigate for those giant plow trucks and all the trucks that are currently using that exact area? It's a very tight radius back there. This all seems unnecessary to me. I have expressed it, and I'm very happy to see my community here to support this.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Yes, I think you did mention, and you will see as we go through the recommendations we are making, which I think is now up to 14, that we have addressed many of your concerns. So we are requesting that the Board of Selectmen include a fire suppression system in the design of the building. I believe that Weston and Sampson at our previous meeting in January mentioned the cost within the $50,000 to $60,000 range. I will note that under no definition of site plan review are financials to be considered by us. That's done by the Capital Budget Committee, the Warrant Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and Town Meeting. So we haven't addressed the financials of either location. Either way, nor have we taken into account the financials when we've made our recommendations, which will be reviewed by the Board of Selectmen. So we've also included a recommendation that that filling of the tanks be done under supervision of a DPW staff member so that they can react quickly if there's a problem with the Conservation Commission requirements. I will ask Kevin, who I see is here, Kevin McCabe, our Director of DPW, to address Nicole's question about the snow plows and sanders and turning around and so forth in that back area of the garage.
Yeah, so when they ran the site scenario, they ran a WB50, which is basically an 18-wheeler with a tractor. So there's substantial swing radius between the corner of the building and the tanks to maneuver in there.
I would like to submit some videos that I took from last week to the board. That I just don't see how that's possible, but I would like to submit some videos, and I would also like to request an additional study is done while there's a snowstorm and there are 3 giant trucks backing up to get sand filled. There's also a giant metal platform back there that's huge that they use. It's new that they use to put the lifter truck on to dump the sand. So there's that's taking up additional space. So I'm wondering if your study was done while that giant platform was there.
Kevin?
I can speak on behalf of Kevin.
Sure.
As Kevin mentioned,
Jesse?
we have an extension in our CAD software to kind of simulate different design vehicles maneuvering through a site. So we took what we know to be a very conservative vehicle, the WB50, to emulate a fuel delivery to the site or any very large vehicle accessing the site, and it's able to maneuver around the site in clockwise and counterclockwise maneuvers to access the fuel station successfully. So that's something we could provide if requested by the board as a part of a condition. But based on our analysis, the fuel system is able to be accessed by all the design vehicles that we have in mind for the site.
Yeah, and just to add, the ramp that was referenced is actually portable. So if needed to reorientate or move, that can be accommodated as well.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments and any new information that can be provided by anybody else who is on tonight?
Hi, this is
Has a
Chris
hand up.
Benson.
Wait, hold on. I've got all kinds of hands being raised.
We've had Dave Haviland with his hand up, and
Okay,
then Jean Lucinda was after that.
okay, and then we'll do the Bensons. Mr. Haviland.
Okay, well, thank you. First of all, a couple of things that everyone needs to know, that we must replace these tanks because they are out of warranty, and we will lose our liability coverage if they are not replaced. So everyone needs to understand that they have to be replaced, and soon. Another one, which is when you buy a home next to a highway garage, to say that there's not going to be a fueling operation is a tough pill to swallow. If you are representing the town, because the town needs to conduct its operations, keep its roads safe, keep these vehicles fueled. My primary concern is something that hasn't come up yet that I've been able to, at least I've heard. And that is, when the existing building was built and the building committee agreed to put the tanks where they currently are, it was part of an agreement with the neighbors to not do what is currently being proposed. So the history needs to weigh in here on what was agreed to in the past and what we're now undoing inadvertently because the history wasn't dug into. My next question has to do, I understand and appreciate the details we got tonight, so thank you for those. But I'm going to put on my old fire underwriting hat. And yes, you are within whatever the standards might be. But after underwriting for the factory mutuals, I've seen video and incidences that would make us all kind of want to curl up in a ball and not do this. So what I'm looking for right now is a list of what are the distances from the fuel tanks to the existing highway garage, the new sheds, and the buildings for the cell phone tower. And that is, if we do have some kind of accident, are we going to literally wipe out our entire infrastructure in the DPW? So yes, that is what I'm concerned with right now in terms of knowing what the distances are. And to let everyone know on this call, we've asked the same underwriter of our insurance to weigh in on this, because if they're not willing to give us insurance, or if the premium is going to be a very large increase, this needs to weigh into our decision-making process. Another thing I would appreciate is a couple of parking spaces for the Dunkin' Donuts that are on our property are of literal no concern to me whatsoever. This is about public safety, our neighbors and our citizens. And if some Dunkin' Donuts patrons are inconvenienced because they can't park in the highway garage, that doesn't fly with me. My next question, not to be answered tonight, but can the engineers look at a system on the current location where vehicles would not have to back up? Can it be put in a similar, the same area, but redesigned to allow trucks to go in so they don't have to back up? And I have not heard that being definitively knocked out, but you can get an idea of where I'm leaning here in terms of what we need to do for our citizens. I'm weighing that against what the highway garage needs to do and all of our services that use these fuel tanks. It's got to be efficient, it's got to be safe, and it has to work. But I've got a concern. The fence for the cell tower in those buildings has already been beaten up pretty bad by snow removal operations. And if we overlay this, the island, and the lanes coming through with this snow removal, there are some years you're going to have to use a bucket truck to get in there just to remove the snow because there's no place for it to go. These are very, very tight lanes. So I would like to see that map of the location blown up with sufficient data showing the site, the distances to these buildings, so we can make a determination. And frankly, the fire underwriter can make a safe determination on the risks that may or may not be involved. Let's see, I had a couple other notes here.
Excuse me, Dave,
Yep,
if I may.
yep.
These are all great questions and points to raise, and that's why this is going to be just a recommendation, and you're going to have the opportunity when you conduct your next Board of Selectmen's meeting with this application to address all these and have the answers.
Well,
So,
I would like them to have time to bring us the answers, so that's
Sure,
why I
so-
wanted to weigh in.
do you have any other items to add to the list that we'll include?
The impervious discussion, if we're removing some impervious, I'm assuming that can get brought back to pervious. And so there will be no net increase either way. If we replace it, it's going to be a similar amount of impervious. And if we move it, it will be a similar amount of impervious, but the existing could then be put back to gravel. So I don't understand that delineation. Maybe you'll be able to explain that to me later. But the biggest one with me is also the public safety of those trucks turning around during a major snow event. And I remind everyone, a major snow event to me is the April 1 storm that brought the old highway garage to the ground. So thank you for your time. I just want to make sure that everyone understands on both sides the circumstances as I understand it now. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Jean Lacunda. You're on, there you go.
Thank you, everyone. I share many of the concerns that have already been expressed and I'm sure are yet to come. I do have a background as a landscape architect and I am a former Weston & Sampson employee. And it's from that perspective that I wanted to raise a couple of questions and share my comments. I have not reviewed all of the material thoroughly, and I don't know if everything that I have reviewed includes the extent of the studies done. One of my primary concerns is the lack of consideration, and it really began with Mr. Haviland's comment, which I took great offense to. If I understood him correctly, he is saying that people who live up in the Meeting House and Haven Street area should have known what they were getting into as purchasers of homes in those locations. Really shame on you, Mr. Haviland. I would like to think that our town and all of you volunteers and employees are increasingly sensitive to the character of our town and the way we address these issues. Our neighborhood was already hit very hard a number of years ago because of the fuel spill in the center of town and the very inadequate way that the town handled that situation historically. So I appreciate that many of my fellow neighbors are coming to this discussion with that weighing heavily on their mind. And I know that a lot of work is being done to address those concerns, but please understand our sensitivity to the interactions we've had with the town in the past historically, and working hard, as I know all of you are, to make sure communications in the future are much better. As we move forward, I would just like to understand a number of things. The traffic information that's been shown, and some people have spoken to that already regarding the movement of vehicles, seems inadequate to me. I would like to know if a more thorough study was actually done, and if not, as Mr. Haviland actually asked, could a more thorough study of traffic movement be taken? And that would include all of the traffic that really is the day-to-day reality over there. It's church traffic, it's library traffic, it's daycare traffic, it's Dunkin' Donut traffic, as well as all of the DPW operations. Likewise, I'm concerned about the study that was done on alternative locations. I found it to be lacking, and if there's more information than what has been provided so far in terms of studies being done by Weston and Sampson and the considerations of those alternative locations, I hope that those can be shared with everyone. A couple of examples of that is that just pros of the alternative locations have not been mentioned tonight. And maybe that was as a result of trying to be succinct in terms of the presentation given to all of us. But I was struck by simple things, but very important things, like the mention of the 4% grade at the current location, and then mention that the grade at the proposed preferred location is less than that, but is less 3.9. 3.5. I mean, is there really a distinct difference? I felt like the presentation of the alternative locations, although simplified, which I appreciate, was really not fair in terms of reviewing the pros and the cons. And I'm surprised by that. I'm also surprised that there has been no visual analysis, or at least I have not seen any visual analysis. I think everyone can appreciate that the people along the property line on Meeting House are at a higher elevation looking down at the DPW. And yes, although those people understood that that property was used for that purpose when they purchased their homes, I think we can all appreciate how much the use and the volume of traffic on the DPW site has changed over the years. Much of that is inevitable with the growth of the town, and I appreciate that again. But I would like to know that all of your considerations take in a greater sensitivity of the view sheds, view corridors, both from the DPW site into those neighborhoods in that direction, and from the neighborhood down into the DPW site. I think that's really a basic part of site location analysis, and I'm very surprised that that has not been done. If it has been done, please share it, and I apologize for my comments related to that. I'm going to stop there because I know there are a lot of people who want to share their concerns and questions tonight. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jean. Let's see, we have
Since
Jonathan.
Benson's were next.
Oh, Benson's, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Hi there, everybody. I'm a neighbor abutting this property that we're talking about tonight. And I agree with this, the person who just spoke with us, and many of her points are well taken and what I support wholeheartedly. I think an alternative site description and evaluation is further needed. We have outgrown the town shed location, much like neighbors, you know, who are around here. I think it's time that the town looks at the town shed and finds out if its location might need to be changed. We have certainly outgrown our situation here. And it's time that we take more of a proactive approach and consider our neighbors and not look at our neighbors as knowing that we bought next to this town shed. It has changed over the years tremendously in terms of its how busy it is and the type of trucks that they're bringing in there. I think time is changing, and I think it's time for the Dover community to look at this and decide now before we make another big investment into a gas tank situation that might not be appropriate for the forthcoming years. I haven't seen that evaluation, whether or not we gave any forethought into where we're going. It's not just about now, but it's about the future. And I'll end there just to say I am concerned for our neighborhood. I am concerned for the water and everything else that we're facing in this transition with the town shed.
Thank you.
John Jeffries was next after that.
Hi, Carol.
Hey, John.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. It's impressive how many people have turned out. We all really came to see you, Carol, but this is an important topic, and I appreciate
Good to see
everybody's
you again,
input.
John.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I want to echo three things and make just two quick comments. All of my neighbors who made the presentations, thank you. Very well done. Nicole, thank you for doing this. And Jean, thank you for your comments. We, my family and I, are the closest to the existing tanks. There were no surprise. We knew they were there. We watched. Where you cannot help but be impacted by it. I can tell you where the current tanks are about 250 feet from our property, from the closest our property abuts. The town garage is 10 feet. So it is literally our backyard, quite literally. The additions that everybody has mentioned, the additions to trucks and vehicles, the additions to the solar panel, which was never supposed to have noise, has noise that all of us on this side of the hill can hear whenever the sun is shining. It was something that that Kevin was not aware of when the solar panels went in, but little things like that become big things. And literally the structure of the building created the vibrations which last all day. And you can hear it all day whenever the sun is shining. So I'd like you to take those things into consideration, Dave, when you make this decision. I'd also like you to take into consideration two other things that have been mentioned. Alternative sites need to be explored. The site behind where the current pervious material is stored next to Dunkin' Donuts is only a very small part of what the town stores. Most of the storage happens on Dedham Street behind the tennis courts and the section of land that the town owns. It's a very, very large section of land. It's where Kevin and his team do all the recycling materials. It is uniquely suited for this type of a service. If the tanks are going to be above the ground, we don't have a problem with the wells that are located behind the tennis courts. It would be a perfect site for it. Carol, I don't know if you looked at that, and I don't know if that was part of the October discussions, but I think that area or something like that area should be considered. As everyone has mentioned, we have outgrown the lot. And I'm going to just add one other thing, that the planning board, I think, has done a very good job at looking at a lot of these issues, weighing concerns. The one thing that was absent from the survey that your architectural team and your engineers did was the community involvement portion. I know that Carol and the members of the planning board take that into consideration as much as anything. But that one part seemed to be missing, the impact on the abutters. The current location is 200 or so feet from my property. You're cutting that distance almost in half if you put it behind the shed and next to Nicole and Jonathan Fryer's property. We really have to take that in consideration. There are no abutters in the Dedham Street property. Again, I'm going to just say thank you, Carol, to everyone, and for all of your help and everyone's involvement this evening. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John.
Justine was next.
Okay, Justine.
You'll never hear me say this again. I'll defer to Lee Jeffries and Jonathan Fryer, and then I'll be next, okay?
Okay.
So Lee Jeffries then was after.
All right, thank you very much. I just wanted to say the current location, it appears that the only cons against it are one of convenience or inconvenience. These trucks back up all day long. So do your fire trucks and your police cars. We've been here for 15 or so years and nobody has ever had a problem backing up to get their gas. Unless the quality of our drivers is going downhill, I don't see that as a huge reason as to move these tanks. And also, there's been no other comments as to why it should be done other than when you're replacing them, filling up your gas, which to move them and to cause all of this just out of convenience does not make any sense.
Thank you, Lee. Jonathan, I think you're next.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Carol. And thank you, Justine. It's always nice to go before you. I guess just a couple things. I've lived behind the town garage for a long time, and I've always found them to be one of my best neighbors. And the current superintendent, Kevin, has always been a pleasure to work with. But I think this time, this project, he's really just looking to put a canopy over his gas pump so he doesn't get rained on. And I don't think that's really that important. If we look at the current location, they really only give 3 reasons why that doesn't work. One is that the highway department, the police department, and the fire department are nervous about backing up. I don't think that our public employees are really that worried about that. Carol, are you paying attention?
I'm taking notes.
Oh, good. These are really about the balancing equities. In the back of the highway department, we have the cell tower, we have Park and Rec, and we have the salt shed. It's not fair to put another problem back beside us when it can stay where it is. Don't deny that they have to have gas pumps. It's been there for over 30 years. It can go back there. Now, the other issue that the highway department raises is that it's in violation of our sideline setbacks, and that they'd like to make that conforming. It's 20 feet, they encroach on it 5 or 10 feet. It wasn't a problem for the highway department to put the salt shed back 1 foot from the back lot lines when they rebuilt that. There was no concern about complying with side lot lines. Same thing with the shed that they're rebuilding along the railroad tracks. That thing should have been torn down, but they're rebuilding it, and that violates all sorts of setbacks. They could have moved that. And lastly, they talk about the AT&T easement. Yes, it is on the AT&T easement, but that easement isn't being used. It's never been used to my knowledge. I don't think it will ever be used. Doesn't go anywhere. And they probably have lost their rights to it because our tanks have been there for over 30 years. And if they wanted to put a line through there, what they didn't mention was that in the easement, the town can ask them to relocate it around a structure. So other than the backing up of the town employees in their vehicles, there really is no reason not to put it back where it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Let's see, Justine, are you ready now?
Janet Greenwood also had her hand up. I don't know if that makes a difference to you, Justine.
Justine, you're mute.
No, Janet can go. I'm here as a historian. Okay, Janet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justine. My question's for Weston and Sampson. Can you tell me the impact of Chapter 21E on the cost of the cleanup at the original site? And is it minimized if the tank is not moved?
Janet, that's a financial question. And as I stated in the beginning, though there might be a lot of questions, well, there are a lot of questions about how we define site plan review in Dover. There is one definitive we can state, and that is that the financials are totally out of our purview. So I think that's a great question, and it can be raised, I think, when the selectmen, when it goes up to the selectmen for their discussions. in an open meeting.
Thank you.
Anybody else before our historian? I only see one. Let me just extend my. No one on page 2. Okay, Jasmine, do you see anybody else with their hand up? I do
No, I
not.
don't see anyone else.
Okay, Justine?
Okay, so I was a young girl when we bought our house here. When I was 28 years old, I'm now 78. That's a long time to live here. Of course, it's not as long as someone like Fred Sears, et cetera, who came here when he was 4. Having said that, I've been in town government, I think, ever since 1976. So I'm not going to be exactly precise in all the dates I'm going to give you, but some people have already alluded to the problems that this town garage site has posed to the Haven Street, Meeting House Hill, Church Street, Townwell, et cetera. So if I can just briefly talk about that. First of all, I totally agree with, I think it was John Jeffries, who said that the neighbors had not been consulted. Kevin, you're a great engineer. I applaud you for your hiring Weston and Sampson. It's a terrifically thorough review. The only thing I would say, it didn't cover, the scope was too narrow. I would say the Dunkin' Donuts site, and even perhaps the Carroll Park recycling site should have been presented, should be presented to town meeting before we start spending this kind of money. But I have ultimate confidence in Weston and Sampson. They are a good firm. I was a commercial banker. I used them, et cetera. But community engagement was non-existent. And by the way, this also relates to Haven Street's problem with the 20 Haven Street garage.
Justine, this meeting
If I
tonight
may-
is on 2 Dedham Street. I do not want to discuss and will not continue to hear about 20 Haven Street tonight.
It has to do with community involvement. You've got to involve more than just the owner of the land. There are a lot of people around you, whether it's a DPW site or a Haven Street site, that get affected by your behavior. And that's got to start being incorporated into site plan review things, okay? Having said that, second point, back in the late 80s, as some of you know, we had a drunken driver who was refueling the mobile gas station in the center of town on Christmas Eve. He continued to tank up all the diesel gas stations on the mobile site, and all gallons, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gallons of gasoline went downhill from the mobile site in the center of town to the American Legion site, to the town garage site, polluting all of our wells. And we're all private wells, not Meeting House Hill anymore, because they had to hook up, because Church Street, the public well in Church Street that Dover used to have, was contaminated by the MTBE that was caused by the mobile problem. And our wells, Haven Street, Haven Terrace, Church Street, all the way down to Trout Brook. We're talking maybe 50 homes least that I went into were contaminated by MTBE. So this is a big deal. And yes, thank you, Kevin. I'm glad that the tanks are still above ground. I'm glad you have all these tanks and whistles and whatever to alert people. I'm glad that you're going to say there's going to be a DPW person there when new gasoline or diesel comes. But you don't understand, we've been through hell on this site. And I had to have private water for over 10 years in my house before the MTBE dissipated from my private well. So this is not, we weren't consulted. We didn't know anything was happening about this until a few weeks ago. Number 3, back in 1997, we had the infamous April Fool's Day snowstorm where the Hodgson factory garage, which is the reason that by the railroad station, Hodgson was one of the first contractors that built prefab housing that was shipped, marketed by the Sears Roebuck Company and was sent all over the country. And Hodgson was a local person, began making chicken coops, and from there,
Justine, could we sort of really
no,
focus?
I'm just saying, the only reason we have a DPW there is because of the Hodgson factory. And so frankly, other locations, whether it's by the Dunkin' Donuts, where that could be expanded, frankly, or even John Jeffries or Jonathan's or who has ever commented about moving it over to the Carroll Park area, makes a lot of sense to me, because this is a very small site to have a huge amount of operation, okay? That's all I can say. I don't think it's a great site. I think other sites should be evaluated.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other hands up? I don't see any. Jasmine, do you?
I do not know.
Okay, let me just double check my second screen here. Okay, I do not. So thank everybody for your input. I will remind you that the planning board, because this is in an open official district, is making recommendations. We're making recommendations on what is presented to us, which is a plan to move the storage system from the front to the back. We don't have any authority or purview to discuss long-term planning of alternative sites in Dover for a DPW site or for fuel stations. We are here to opine and make recommendations upon what was presented to us. So with that being said, we have a draft decision based upon all the input from September 9th, all the letters from Weston and Sampson, all the communications from the residents of Dover, the meeting on January 9th. And I would like at this point, Jasmine and I will go through this long recommendation. Keep in mind that as you're looking at it, that this is not a decision as our normal preliminary site plan reviews are. It is a recommendation. We have tried to capture the many issues that have been raised, some within our site plan purview, some that are not. But we felt it mandatory that we provide the selectmen and the selectmen's office, who will be making the final decision, on all the information that we were gathering. And they can always, of course, review our hours and hours of Zoom meetings, but it's also nice to have something in writing. So with that context, I would like to start going through the site plan review. And Jasmine, why don't you start leading through it? And please understand that at various points, I might just interrupt to make a point.
Absolutely. The background reviews the process that began technically in August of 2024. We held a public hearing on September 9th, 2024, and continued that public hearing until January 6th of 2025 to discuss several issues and get other important information on the project. Upon reviewing that application process, we found that it wasn't done per our normal standard. So we sought town council's opinion and decided we would rehear this this evening and open it up as a new hearing. So that's why we reference all of the dates in the public hearing process. So to review, it was an installation of a new fuel system located in the rear of the parcel with one 9,990 double wall steel split tank, a fueling canopy, concrete fueling pad, online gasoline diesel dispenser, a diesel exhaust fluid tote with heated enclosure, other miscellaneous components to support the fuel island, and removing of the existing fuel system located proximate to the town entrance. The new fuel system would allow for the removal of the aging double-walled Convault fuel tanks, which were installed in 1994. Their 30-year warranty would be expiring in 2024, or did expire in 2024. The proposed location for the new fuel island is depicted on the plans by Weston and Sampson, revised through October 21st, 2024. This location was selected to promote more efficient fueling operation for town vehicles. The position of the existing fuel system frequently requires vehicles to reverse before or after fueling and makes the delivery of fuel challenging. Additional improvements enabled by the new fuel system include a proposed canopy with under canopy motion sensor lighting. The new fuel system would be classified as a fleet vehicle motor fuel dispensing facility. Therefore, fire suppression for the fuel island is not required by the Massachusetts Code as confirmed by Ed Cornack of the fire department. The proposed modifications are located outside of the 100-foot buffer zone to the nearby isolated wetland, which was delineated by Weston and Sampson on October 12, 2023, and is not within the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction. The proposed modifications result in no net increase in impervious surface on the site. Pursuant to section 18540C, the Dover zoning bylaws, no application for a building permit shall be made for any structure in the open space district until site plans have been submitted to the Board of Selectmen for review, comments, and recommendations. Therefore, approval from the Board of Selectmen will also be required. The Board of Health, Town Engineer, and Building Department do not have requirements for this amendment. The Fire Department requires a permit for the tank's final disposal site when removed and the name of the contractor handling the disposal. The proposed work is not expected to create any increase in pedestrian, bicycle, or vehicular traffic to or from the site. To review the application, other materials to the board, we have all the memos from Weston and Sampson. The plans submitted by them, including updated sheet C105 that was most recently submitted that shows 12 feet between the fuel storage and the AT&T location where the fence is. We have the memos from the Dover Fire and Dover Police, email from Janet Bowser of the Conservation Commission reviewing their requests of the project after their review, and emails from Nicole Safarian and Ed Cornack from the Fire Department are also listed on there. So to get into the findings.
One moment, please. I just want to remind everybody that every single one of these documents is available for your perusal on the Dover website. If you go to Planning Board, you go to the left and go with Applications under Review, you will find all these documents accessible to you. Okay, thank you.
So we did break this down. I think this was the first one we did this way, Carol, with the findings that included more of the conversation as well. So we are going to go through the findings of site plan review, and then we're going to go over the findings that were made based on comments that were presented for the project. So these findings are based under site plan review, compliance with the requirements for lot size, the installation of the new fuel station complies with all dimensional requirements. The existing driveway access is not proposed to be disturbed by the work. The drainage on site will be updated, but will not impact the driveway openings or traffic on the site long term. The proposed installation has no impact on parking. The proposed material will meet state requirements for a fueling station. There will be appropriate measures taken to reduce detrimental impacts around the surrounding premises with erosion control measures during construction and appropriately installed drainage per the request of the Conservation Commission as detailed and the documents referenced above. According to the DPW, the structure is being placed in a location that allows for easier fueling for vehicles. The potential impact focused on the contamination due to a potential fuel leak. Since the project is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone for the Conservation Commission review, the Planning Board did request the applicant go before the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission submitted several requests as detailed in the reference documents. In addition, the existing drainage system on site is being updated as well, which will be beneficial for the site long term. The proposed structure will replace an outdated system. The proposed structure will meet state requirements for a fuel station, and the application complies with requirements of the zoning bylaw. So this important items of discussion, per the decision issued to AT&T at 2 Dedham Street on December 10th, 2024, access to the cell tower will be moved to the right side of perimeter fencing to allow for better access, so it won't disrupt the fueling station should it be placed there. The canopy height is sufficient for any town vehicle or snowplow to pass under. The DPW will keep the 10-foot or now 12-foot area clean of snow debris for access. It was noted by the AT&T applicant that the fencing would be parallel to the new fuel storage area. That fencing there had been damaged previously. The planning board expressed concerns about this and reviewed it with the DPW. Whether just leaving it unplowed is safer than piling up snow on both sides of the narrow area. Weston and Sampson provided a new site plan with a 12-foot wide lane. The lack of fire suppression, although not required by law due to non-commercial use, is a concern. There is a recommendation in the conditions that addresses this. Placement in an area with lots of truck traffic. This area will not see large amounts of traffic outside of fueling vehicles, although snow removal equipment of the town and vendors can be expected to increase during snowstorms. And for potential leaks out into the 100-foot wetland buffer, the applicant did appear before the Conservation Commission on October 23rd, 2024 to address those concerns, and the Conservation Commission made the following recommendations for prevention.
Excuse me for just a moment there, Jasmine. So the Conservation Commission recommendations, number 1, 2, 3, and 4 that you see in the document are quite extensive. They've been on the town website, and I'm asking anybody who's on tonight whether they feel it necessary to read all these out loud. Anyone? Okay, in that case, Jasmine, why don't we just jump to the next to G.
Thank you. So the Village Center has public parking lots at the Townhouse, Community Center, Library, and Highway Garage, and limited street parking on Center Street and Springdale Ave. The remaining spots are in the privately owned areas of Dover Market and the Legion. We already know that the parking overflow for popular events at the Library and Legion is problematic. There does not appear to be any meaningful areas for parking expansion. With the revitalization of the community center and the work on the Village Center revisioning project, the removal of additional spots at the highway garage, should the fuel station be located in the front of the building, may limit the flexibility and ability to add needed spots and impact further revitalization of the town center.
Okay, so before we get into the recommendations, so as Jasmine mentioned, this is a new section that we've just recently put in, the findings section, because we wanted to make sure that the recommendations or decisions that we make during our site plan review process are detailed enough so that all the other boards, committees, and staff members that need to opine on this, whether it's Board of Health or the town engineer or the building inspector, or in this case, the Board of Selectmen, have a context in which to view our recommendations. Of course, now we have Zoom meetings because of COVID, but before we had Zoom meetings, it was only these kind of recommendations and the minutes, which tend to be even briefer, that would provide the overall context of a discussion. So I hope that this lengthy list of findings is helpful to you all, and I hope that it will be helpful for all the town officials that are on tonight as they continue reviewing this project. So now we can go on to the recommendations.
So after considering the application and other materials submitted at its meeting of January 27th, 2025, the board per 185-36B4 with the following recommended conditions recommends approval of the updated site plans. Is that what we're recommending, Carol?
Yep.
Of the updated site plans by Weston and Sampson titled Town of Dover, Massachusetts Department of Public Works with the sheets detailed. Prior to construction, minor modifications to the site plan may be approved administratively by the planning board chair. Any future modifications to the site shall be reviewed by the planning board and approved by the Board of Selectmen. The lighting on site must not spill over onto any adjoining property. The site is subject to approval by the Conservation Commission. The site is subject to approval by the Board of Selectmen. In addition to spill prevention features, the spill response guidelines outlined in a memo from Weston and Sampson dated October 22nd, 2024. The DPW confirmed that all electronic leak monitoring systems and overfill prevention alarms will alert DPW employee who will be an on-call 24/7 basis to respond to any detected fuel releases. And the commission requested that this confirmation be included in writing. These next 3 are the commission's recommendations up until number 10. Number 11 is a planning board condition. Refueling of storage tanks must be done under DPW staff supervision. 12, given that no building permit is required, appropriate and timely inspection during construction and prior to final as-built plans being approved by the Board of Selectmen, relevant inspections by licensed professionals must be completed and documented to the planning board. The Dover Fire Department permitting and oversight during and after construction shall be defined, and the RFP for construction shall define the role of a design engineer and project oversight professional. A fire suppression system is recommended to be installed specified by a licensed engineer that would involve a pre-engineered dry chemical fire suppression system designed for fuel dispensing areas. This system should use sodium bicarbonate to smother fires and interrupt combustion. And the system should activate automatically through heat sensors or manually via pull stations, triggering the discharge of dry chemicals and shutting off fuel pumps. Prior to action by the Board of Selectmen, confirmation on the permitting requirements for either location under Chapter 116 groundwater protection districts shall be obtained. Carol, did you say you had one more you were considering earlier?
I do have another one. Again, I will remind everybody that these are recommendations, that this will be going on to the Board of Selectmen. They can choose to add, delete, amend, edit, continue their research and so forth. But knowing that noise is an issue, and that Nicole mentioned today, that John Jeffries mentioned today. For some reason in my files, I have some email exchanges with Nicole back in 2023 with the Board of Selectmen's office about noise during installation, I believe, of some roofing or solar panels as well. Some of you may know that at the May 2024 town meeting, the planning board presented a bylaw, chapter 93, to address construction noise. That bylaw specifically exempted municipal projects. However, I would like to make the following recommendation added to section 5. So this would be section 5, number 15. No, 5, back at the end. There we go. Okay, and we'll have Jasmine type as I speak. Although construction bylaw, chapter 93 does exempt municipal projects, comma, we recommend that construction hours adhere to the bylaw, and that notice of construction schedule be conveyed to abutters. Nicole, this specifically addresses 2 of your points, not only in your conversations over the last couple of weeks on this, but your 2 major points also from your 2023 comments on other activity that was being done at the highway garage site. George and Jody, given what you've heard tonight from the abutters as well as from Weston and Sampson, are there any other recommendations you would like to add?
I might just suggest that we address, I heard it mentioned in this meeting tonight, the issue of a traffic study having not been completed. And if that is the case, the recommendation that one be completed as part of this process.
So this is a traffic study internal to the site.
Mhm.
Do you have some wording you would like to suggest?
Prior to action by the Board of Selectmen, Planning Board recommends that a traffic study analyzing traffic flows to the existing site in comparison to the proposed site be conducted to surface clarity on traffic patterns on the town garage site.
Hold on, can we back that up a little bit?
Probably not great English.
No, it's okay, I've lost you there. So,
in comparison with the proposed site. I mean, I think that's basically it. I think I heard that topic addressed, that there was a lot of big swooshing around during snowstorms in the back of the site. And so really having clarity on how traffic patterns would flow to the new proposed site.
can we just add internal traffic flows right here? Is that okay with you?
Yes, that's a good idea. Thank you, Jasmine.
Traffic flows. Do you guys say the existing location in comparison to the proposed location, because it's all
Sure.
the same site?
Thank you.
Does that grasp that?
Yeah, thank you.
About around the existing location.
What was that, George?
Should it be around the existing location, not in the existing location? I don't know if we're being too cute here.
Okay. Anything else, Jody or George?
No, I did want to address though the issue of, I know that Dave Haviland had quite a lot of questions. And I'm not clear that they belong in the recommendations, but my assumption is that they are being captured in order for preparation for the Board of Selectmen discussions on this topic. But I just wanted to clarify. I wanted to clarify that because I think that the raising of the questions were many and good ones, but I don't think that clarity on the recommendations is applicable here tonight. And I just want to confirm that you agree with that, Carol.
I totally do. It's not often that we have the positions that are going to be voting on this, opining on our review. I appreciate Dave's comments, however. He could either discuss them tonight and give time for everybody that's involved in answering them to do their research, or he could have waited until the selectmen's meeting to delay the process even further. So Dave, I appreciate your comments with the understanding that it will be the selectmen's office and town staff and Weston and Sampson that will be addressing most of your questions, other than probably the history, which you'll have to get some from either Justine or some other old timers that are there. Maybe Bobby Tosi has some information as well. Thank you for that, Jody. Anything else? Okay, so we will now take a vote. The vote is to approve this recommendation with the edits that we just did. And at which point we will then submit this to the Board of Selectmen. And they will take over the process of moving this to a vote as they see fit. So I am not going to read the entire recommendations again. If this was a normal site plan review and it was our decision, we would do it for the record. But we have this on Zoom. We will be posting this document on the website tomorrow. And of course, I'm sure it will come up when the site plan review agenda item occurs on the Board of Selectmen meeting, whenever that is. And the public, of course, will be available to participate in that too. So I'm going to make a motion to approve the preliminary site plan review recommendation that was discussed this evening on January 27th as amended during the meeting. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I will now take a vote. George?
No.
Jody?
Yes.
Carol, yes. So with that, this recommendation and our thoughts and comments will go up to the Board of Selectmen's office. And I ask that you, all the attendees here, keep apprised tonight of are apprised of the Board of Selectmen's activities on this, to make sure that you're aware of when and notified when the Board of Selectmen will be putting this on their agenda. So thank you, everybody. We'll add this to the website. And of course, you can always review the discussion that we've had tonight. It'll be posted by the end of the week on the YouTube channel for Dover. And with that, we are completing item number 2A of our agenda. So thank you, everybody, and I think most of you can probably go and have dinner.
Thank you,
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you. Just get my act together here for a moment. Okay, item number 2B was site plan review of 78 Strawberry Hill. We do not have a complete application for this. I'm not sure why it was added to the agenda without a complete application, but we will not be discussing it tonight. The applicant has been informed of the various pieces of the application that are missing per our checklist. And at some point in the future, it will be back on our agenda when the application is complete. So now we go to 2C, which is a review of the FEMA floodplain bylaw language. This is a warrant article for the May town meeting. It's a follow-up to a warrant article that was approved at the May 2022 town meeting, or 23. FEMA has changed their maps in order for insurance to be obtained by residents that live in floodplain areas in Dover. We need to accept their maps at town meeting, and we need to have bylaw language that supports the Commonwealth's position on the bylaw. So Jasmine, if you could put that up. I wasn't able to open it. It still had that little orange doohickey on it.
Okay, sorry about that. So this was pretty good news. We don't have the maps yet, otherwise we would share them with you. But this is from Eric Carlson, who works with the state, and he reviewed our bylaws for us and said the only reviews that he sees that we need to change is to update section 185-44C to include the new effective date for firm and FIS, which is July 8th, 2025, and to update section 185-44E6 and H by deleting the addresses. So we'll make those changes. Obviously, everything that we do, we have to run by Nina for review, but this will be something I can send to her tomorrow morning, make those changes redlined and send it to her. Those were the only changes they recommend that we make based on the firm maps, is just the date
Okay,
changes.
great. Yeah, we've been waiting for a couple years now for those maps that they've been delayed. I would suggest that you pull the PowerPoint, the slide deck that was used at the town meeting when we approved the bylaw, and then you can just make a couple quick little changes to it to address that.
Perfect. Okay.
Thank you for that. And the next item, item 2D, is to vote on an MBTA consultant to help us get to yes on the MBTA Communities Act that we're required to approve by the end of the year. So Jody or Jasmine, you want to give a little background to this?
Jasmine, if you wouldn't mind taking the lead, thank you.
Sure. So this is a contract that was given to us by, our proposal rather, that was given to us by Horsley Witten Group for a proposed scope of technical assistance to get us through, essentially to hopefully get the town meeting, the town bylaw to town meeting. So we asked them for a multitude of tasks. They came back with mapping and data services, compliance model iterations, public engagement, zoning overlay text adjustments, public hearing assistance, and that cost was $28,000. So we said, is there anything that you can do for us that's a little more budget friendly, considering that you've done so much work for us already? So Jeff went through and said that we could do tasks 1, which is the mapping and data services, which is essentially just helping us create our overlays, wherever those might be, how that's going to fit into the future GIS system, so that way we're not making those shape files by ourselves. The compliance model iterations, which it is nice to have Horsley Witten for. The town, we do have staff that are trained on staff to use these compliance models, so we don't necessarily have to use Horsley Witten time for that. But that is something that we've included in the scope. Public engagement informational sessions, so we would like to have Jeff Davis available to have 2 public information sessions with us, reviewing what MBTA is and reviewing overlay zones, public input, survey data, things of that nature. And then task 5, zoning overlay text amendments, was recommended as well. He's already drafted the MBTA communities draft bylaw. This would be simple adjustments based on public feedback. More extensive requests would require another contract amendment. So if we completely threw it in the bin and said we need to start from scratch, but if we're just changing things like proposed zoning districts, that language isn't even in there yet, so that's fine. That wouldn't be that impactful. And then public hearing assistance, that would be if we wanted him to attend our public hearings that we have in September, prior to the special town meeting, or August and September that we have prior to the special town meeting. We said that wasn't entirely necessary, potentially. So he had said he can do 1 mapping data services, 2 compliance model iterations, 3 public engagement, 5 zoning overlay, and 6 public hearing assistance, for under 10,000, which is good because that we don't have to go out for bid if it's under 10,000. We did get one other quote for services, from a different company that came in at $80,000. Just to put it in perspective.
Thank you.
This total is what, 9765, I think.
9765.
Thanks, Jasmine. Thank you for leading that process of getting this quote pulled together for us. So I think that the issue is simply a matter of the planning board voting to accept the proposal and send out a contract to get this moving, right?
Correct. So we would just say, and I can share it so that way you can, whoever's making the motion can see, we would like to accept the proposal and move forward with these items from it, 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. Essentially, number 4 would have been visual data, so what the density looks like on certain acreage and things of that nature. So the visualization, that's really what number 4 was, and that was the huge cost contributor, because that was data that they were completely crafting from scratch. But I'm fairly confident with our other CHAPA resources and our other working relationship with other communities that we could get other visual resources that suit Dover's needs.
Thank you. And I also think the zoning overlay text adjustments is maybe a little light, but I do think that we have the resource of town council for that. And we have other examples from towns that we're looking at and analyzing. The reason I do think that one of the things that we're really going to be focused on in the coming months is getting input, community input to the overlay district locations, certainly, and that's kind of like immediate, but also input on the text of the bylaw itself. So my guess is we're going to need more than 8 hours, but I think this is an awesome, an awesome starting point. Not so much with Jeff. I just think it's going to take more than 8, and we'll figure out how we get that, done.
So would anybody do you have any questions about it?
No.
Any questions about the scope?
I just am kind of looking at it. I think it is what it is, and I'm so glad we're able to move this forward. So I hope we all vote yes tonight.
George, you have any comments or questions?
No.
You're on mute.
No, thanks.
Okay, in that case, I will make a motion to accept the Horsley Witten contract dated January 9th, 2025 for tasks 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 for a total of $9,765. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Jody? George?
Yes.
And Carol, yes. Okay. And the fun really begins.
Oh, God.
Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of December 9th. I think you received them all in the meeting packet. Are there any edits or changes anybody would like to see? In that case, I make a motion to approve the minutes of December 9th as submitted. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Sorry, George.
Roll call vote. Jody?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Carol, yes. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 3A, which is an update on the easement warrant article that we'll be presenting at town meeting again.
So George and I are holding a public information session with Jillian Barger from Anderson and Krieger, who is obviously one of Nina's co-workers. And we're going to be meeting with all of the abutters to all of the easements. We sent out a notice to all of them. Hopefully many of them show up. It is via Zoom. And Jillian is just going to sort of talk through the process, mainly focus on why it would be a benefit for these easements to be accepted. That's the biggest question we're anticipating is why on earth, these aren't accepted now. Why on earth would I want them accepted? Unfortunately, Amy Moot is not available for that meeting, but she has said that she could answer any questions that came up if I take any notes or anything. So we do have her resource there, and we don't anticipate this would be a single meeting. We'd be very surprised. But Jillian did say that we could certainly have a second meeting, or if she felt seeing how the first meeting goes, we may decide it would be better to have individual meetings with individual neighborhoods, depending on what their concerns are. So we'll have that first meeting February 4th and see how it goes, and we'll take it from there.
Sounds good.
Do we happen to know how many easement holders there were? How big was the mailing?
I forget off the top of my head.
Okay.
I believe it was just under 70.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Around 70, did you say? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. And that covered all the easements that had been in the prior warrant article,
Yes.
including Draper Road?
Yes.
So we had discussed not including Draper Road. But I suppose now that the abutter list includes them, that we'll have to address that at February 4th and see how that goes. We can always make a change before town meeting.
And we are still working on getting a quote for GIS to get all of the easements and trails on the GIS, but there's just an awful lot of files that we're still sending them. So just so you know, that's still behind the scenes.
Okay, and that would be that is outside of the scope of the warrant article.
Yes, yes.
It's just something that the town has desperately needed.
Right. Just a relevant topic of interest that you might want to know about.
And will be funded somehow.
Somehow.
Right.
Some way.
Some way. By someone.
By someone.
To finally get our GIS system addressing open space, which is the most valuable thing other than our schools that we're told decade after decade, but we can't keep track of. Yes, got it. Thank you. Any more questions on the easements? That's great. It'll be very interesting to see what the feedback is and what the questions are from the easement holders. And I assume the Zoom meeting will be recorded?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, next item is chair updates. I really don't have any at this point. Obviously, Jasmine and Jody and now Katie are very involved, absolutely, very involved with the MBTA Communities Act. The four of us had a meeting with our town council, Nina, last week, I believe it was, to start looking at the draft bylaw from Nina's perspective, and received a lot of great input. And we're looking forward to, as Jody said, public input through our public hearing open meeting process. Other than that, I think the planning board just has to now just sort of start focusing on the warrant articles that we have to bring to town meeting, which is why we discussed the floodplain one tonight. And we'll be going through the other ones during the February meetings so that we're prepared for the warrant committee's open hearing on March 6th, 17th. So I'll get that done and we'll have the opportunity. I think I see Woody and Cam on from the warrant committee. I assume at some point we'll be asked to come before the warrant committee before the open hearing to review these. So we look forward to hearing that date. Oh, and Micheline's here as well. Wow, great attendance from the warrant committee tonight. And that's about it. Just a lot going on. So our next meeting is February 10th. Bill will not be able to attend February 10th, so we'll need to make sure that we have a quorum for that night. On February 24th, we have Town Council Nina Pickering Cook coming in to give us another tutorial on site plan review. And I'm sure we'll have good attendance by the public on that as well. Jasmine, I think it would be very, very helpful if Walter or Joe were able to attend.
Oh,
And it might be helpful if you and Walter and Joe can sketch out a one-page document that that shows the process of a site plan review and how it flows through all the land use departments. Because it's hard to talk about site plan review without talking about the process as well. And that's all I've got. Anybody have anything else? In that case, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn at 8:47 p.m. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jasmine,
Bye.
Jasmine, can you stay on 1 second?
yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, just if you guys are going to talk, just turn off the recording then.